I was doing other things, but then I decided I wanted to come talk to you. So I've been thinking a lot about my processes with writing and, so many things. But for now, I want to touch on like how I'm kind of plotting. And it's weird saying that because I'm a pantser at heart. I'm more like a gardener. I'm starting to see that there's like different types again. We've all accepted that there's pantsers and plotters and that there's architects and gardeners and really nothing in between. But I would argue that you have your gardeners and you have your landscapers. So gardeners know where they're planting things, they know how it's gonna grow, they have an idea. They're doing this as a hobby. It's OG. Landscapers know a lot more. So landscapers have finished a couple of gardens, they know a lot more about the plant types, they're just all around better. And like, you've got your architects, but you have your builders that know all like the ins and the outs of how to do the physical thing. Whereas I see like the architects are like planners, they like to plan. That's all they do is they plan, but they don't build it. Whereas your builders physically build it. Okay, that were my thoughts on that, and that's the easiest way I've been able to explain it thus far. But anyway, I'm turning into like more of a gardener landscaper sort of plotting style. If that makes sense. It doesn't. I'm like a pantsing plotter. I don't know how to describe it anymore. The way that I have probably always started to write stories is I get that like image in my brain, you know, that one or that sentence that starts everything. And all of a sudden, you're knees deep in the mud being like, there's a story here. There's always been that. And then generally from there, I let it simmer in my brain. I let it get all cassied up in this. I like imagine it, I see the characters, or I might just see one scene and then eventually, or straight away, I decide I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna write a few thousand words. Those few thousand words generally end up being like 5,000 words or sometimes 1,000 words. There's really no in between. There has been a time or two where it's got up to 10 or 20,000 words. And I've learned that if I don't stop myself there and plot, it's a mess. Is a big mess, it's a giant mess. It's a huge mess. Because if I continue writing from that 5,000 words, those 5,000 words are my discovery, are my character like building, are my world building. I mean, it's like me finding out who the fuck lives in this little garden. And I guess I'm studying the environment to see what would be the best to plant there. I don't know. I'm like, testing around. I'm just planting some seeds here, some seeds there. I know it's gonna grow, but I just want to see how it grows for a little bit, and then we restart. And then I go and plan everything. Because generally, if something sounds like a good story to me, and I like get that knee deep into the mud and I'm like digging through like where's my story, it's because I have my starting point or a starting point, and I have an end point or a huge event that happens in that story. So they're like the two things I can plot easily. So my starting event is generally like where we introduce everything. And I'll write that at the start, put in there the key things that I want to hit. And sometimes I'll plot the big thing next. Or I'll go through and I'll be like, wait, so for that to happen I have to do this, 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 and this. Like sometimes the plot is every fucking block and chapter has a breakdown of what needs to happen. Some these couple of blocks kind of have an idea what's going to happen, and this act I want this to happen, and this one point, this one right here, this is going to happen, and that's it. I've also learned that sometimes it's easier, especially if I get like stuck with plotting, I'll start at the start and I'll be like boom, 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 boom. And then I'll get stuck in the middle. So then the next day I'll start at the end and I'll be like boom, 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 boom. And then they'll meet in the middle and I'll be like, oh, this is just how it's meant to be. Because if you think about it from the start, you know where the end is. So you can kind of picture like what needs to happen to get there and what kind of milestones and things you want to happen to your character. But sometimes you get bogged down in the middle because the middle sucks. Or you have your idea of exactly where the middle is. I discovered my middle point yesterday. And then if you start at the end, like generally you know your darkest moment and you might know how you're gonna resolve it all. So like if you start there, then you can work backwards and be like, okay, so for that to happen, this needed to happen beforehand. Oh, and what if this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle. I've been thinking about the middle the last couple of days because I've been looking at like different plot structures, and for me, the 3-act, 9-block, 27 chapter block structure works. Do I stick to it ever? No. But just having that as a preface helps me like visualize what needs to happen. And like I've been looking at all the other acts and ways to do it, and still to me like that feels the most organic when I'm plotting. Even if I'm not looking at the numbers and I'm just like putting down bullet points, I find myself following that sort of structure because it's kind of my favorite. I've discovered I kind of like it. It was also the easiest for me to understand. Like that structure makes sense to me, and you can extend it, you can reduce it if you need to. Hell, you can do it for like a trilogy, you can do it for one book, you can do it however the hell you want. The way that I see it working for a trilogy is that you treat your acts as the books, but each book still has all 3 acts in it. It's just your start is like the dedication to the thing, but they also have a major issue they have to solve in it. Like they know they have to fix it. And then the second one is dedication, like just giving them reasons to fucking do it, okay? And then the end is like, okay, we're doing this. It doesn't matter what you say. Oh no, your father died. I'm sorry. You lost both your arms and your legs and now you have to solve this. That's just how I feel about the 3rd act. And no, I don't kill people in the 3rd act. I kill people in the 1st act, generally. If anyone's gonna die, it's in the 1st act. Oh no, there's one of them where someone dies in the last act. It varies, it's very variant, okay? But it makes sense to me. And it had me thinking, because Kat was talking about how she's turned Catty-tastic, how like you need me talking about writing, you probably need booktube, you understand. In her latest vlog, she was talking about like how hers has changed into a 4-act structure, and I was like, that's really interesting with like changing it around. And she has the midpoint, and that's why she created it. And then I was thinking, and I was looking at it, and I was like, but that's like block 5 to me. Like block 5 is kind of the middle. Block 5's like just that perfect point, because it's right in the middle. It's right in like the build up. It actually has the midpoint in it in the chapters, but it's kind of like you show the old world, and then you're working on like how the old world's different, and you're like comparing it, and then I feel like in the middle of the book something has to happen that propels them forward. Or to me, that's how it is in my head, even if it's not the case. Because like if you get to the middle of the book, here's a problem with some middle of the books. You get there and they're just learning things, but you don't know, they're not even more dedicated, they've been dedicated this whole time. But something happens that pushes them over the edge around there. And that is my favorite game. It just makes sense to me in my head. Whenever I go through and I do plot, I'll probably do it in a document, but then I go through, because I use Scrivener. I love Scrivener. Scrivener is like, to me, the updated version of Note 1, that Microsoft program. I used to use that, and that was cool because it had its different tabs, and it's great if you don't have money to buy one, but you have Microsoft Word for some reason. I find with Scrivener, because I can like build all the files and the sub-files and have my pieces of document in there, it just makes my day. So I'll make the folders which each act in them, then I'll make folders in those acts with the blocks, and then in the blocks I'll put in the chapters. And I'll give everything a name there so that I know what's going to happen. Like sometimes one of them is fucked up, we fix it. New World Order. Like it just random things that trigger in my brain where I'm like, oh yeah, that's what's meant to happen, God. And then that helps. I also go through and in each of those documents, I'll write like a paragraph or a line. One of them is fight, and another one is like 6 paragraphs long, because it's so much more detailed in my head. But I find it fun to kind of like have that juxtaposition of chapters where you're like, this has to happen in this way with this person and you need to show this, and other chapters where you're just like, you know what to do. Just do it. It's just like all a giant game of discovery to me. My only problem is, as with everything, I tend to get bored and stall at the start, because the start is the scariest part because you're setting the tone. And I feel like I have to get it right, which I don't. I know. But then the other thing is that like sometimes I get too in my head and I'll sit there and let it simmer for longer after I've plotted or whatever, and then I'm halfway done with the story, or I'm in the final act of the story in my head, but nothing's happened yet because I haven't written a fucking word, and I need to write some words. But yeah, it's all just like so exciting to me because it's like the discovery, it's the lust of the new story, and then it comes into the no, I really have to finish this. This is my newest story. This is one that I wrote last year, New Year's. I decided to write down in a book and start writing that. And look, it's changed from that original writing only because like I've changed where I'm starting it. I was starting it at a particular point, but then I realized starting it there because of what has to happen in that next act. All that you know is that people say she's a boss ass bitch, that she does this, that she does that, because she can't physically do those things. But if I start it just 24 hours earlier, you get to see her being a boss ass bitch. Like, come on, isn't that amazing? And I don't know why that's amazing, but it also gets a grasp on some characters that don't get grasped on for another chapter or something, and they're all really important. And it also got me to like have a feel of like how they would all fight together, and yeah, it just helped my little brain. But I'm halfway through the book in my head and I need to write the first act. I haven't done too much discovery on the first act or like put down exactly what I need, because I know what I need to happen, but also I'm leaving it as a mystery for myself. And this is probably going to be the book that I write for NaNoWriMo this year, and I'm hoping that I can finish it before New Year's. Failing that, I give myself 9 months, so June. I've just fallen in love with it. Ever since it's entered my brain, it hasn't really left. And when it has left, I haven't been writing. But when I start to write again or do anything in the writing realm, it comes back to me, and it's not really in the same universe as the other ones, but it also is in a weird way that I want to connect them because they're magic, and it deals with death, and I love dealing with death in so many things. I don't know what it is about death. I like death. It's like intriguing to me because it's like that one thing that is definitely going to happen in your life, and I'm dealing with like, okay, I've decided to bring in like Lady Death. Like there's 2 deaths in my mind. I can't see there just being one death in charge of all deaths. I like the idea of there being 2 deaths, like a female and a male, and they're like in love, but they did some bad shit and they were punished by having to live in humans and experience death over and over again until they've learnt their lesson or something else happens. And I kind of have a vague idea of what that is, but I know it's like one of those things that I know, but also I kind of almost want to give a vague mythology with them, but it's so hard to give a vague mythology when they're like physically there. I don't know why I like eternal beings, but I do. And just the idea of playing with death is fun, and there being 2 different deaths that have 2 very different like personalities, but they like each other, they go together well, they have fights and issues. And so in the story, I kind of want like the 2 deaths personalities to be kind of similar to the people who they're inhabiting, but as events and things happen, you see the difference between like the deaths and the humans that they're inhabiting. And then it brings into case like, are they like that because they've had this ethereal being in their body, or are they like this because they just were, and for some reason this is the magical match in heaven that lets them have their redemption? I don't know. It's not too focused on the 2 deaths. They're just a nice little like addition. Also one of them has like blood magic, and they don't want other people to have their blood magic. I don't know. It's very confusing. It's not that confusing. This is the one story that I can kind of like summarize. Also, I summarize it in a song because a song kind of like gave me the idea. Someone told me what the actual song's about, and I was like, what if it was about this? And there were different tones in that song that had my head thinking, and I keep just finding other music that goes with it where I'll like listen to a song and all of a sudden the scene's playing out in my head. There are a couple songs that even though like initially this one scene played out for me, they attached to a couple of different scenes because it just, if I was making a movie for the story, these songs would be part of it. Should I share them? Because I'm gonna stop procrastinating and I'm gonna try and write, or I'm going to finish my webbing. I haven't decided yet, but I should finish the webbing, but I also should write, but webbing, but write, but webbing, but writing, but webbing, but writing, but webbing, but writing. Are you car sick? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I get car sick when watching videos. It's a really weird experience. I'll talk to you guys later, maybe about writing, maybe not, but seeing as I'm writing, bye!